Namaste, namaste, precious, precious souls. Welcome to Book of Life. Here we are in March. Wow, already another month. So today we're going to be reading from the fifth degree, lesson 10, The Science of Soul Travel, part 1. So before we begin, go ahead and just place the tip of the tongue on the palate and just place your hands in a nice receptive pose, palms facing up. And we'll just do a little invocation to the Supreme Being, the source and fountain of all life, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, to all of our spiritual teachers, our celestial guides, our angel guides, to the Astarian hierarchy, to Earlyne Chaney, Robert Chaney, to Master Astara, Lord Kuthumi, Lord Rama, Lord Zosar, to the Astarian hierarchy, all the great, great ones, to the Lord Yehoshua Bar Miriam, the Lord Christ, Holy Mother Mary, Lord Kuan Yin Buddha, Lord Gautama Buddha, Sanat Kumara, Solar Logos, Universal Logos. May we be a channel through which thy holy ones approach the world. May we be a center of the radiation of thy power. Teach us to travel light that we may better gain the heights, break the bonds that bind. Teach us to give ourselves entirely to thy service, to attune ourselves to thy will. Teach us to lay down the small personal life for the greater cosmic life, and to love with the love of God, with thanks and in full faith. Om, Om, Om. We release all unauthorized connections. Cut, cut, cut. All right. The Science of Soul Travel, Part 1, fifth degree, lesson 10. Contacting the unseen worlds. No more fascinating research has persisted through the centuries, whether by the individual seeker in your own home or by researchers in the laboratory, than that focused upon the science of astral projection, often called soul travel or out-of-body experiences, OBE. In our own probings into OBE, again, we turn to Dr. Robert's teachings. Soul travel is a detachment of the inner spiritual self away from the physical form to a short or greater distance. It is one of the methods of contacting unseen worlds about us and witnessing their reality for ourselves. First, let's examine the similarity between 3 phases of ESP: soul travel, trance, and a type of inner vision termed extended clairvoyance or clairvoyance in space. To quote an example of extended clairvoyance, we refer to that marvelous seer, Emanuel Swedenborg, whose writings were prominent at the beginning of the 20th century. He once shocked his world by stating that a city many miles distant was burning fiercely at that very moment. On this occasion, he demonstrated extended clairvoyance, clairvoyance in space, seeing an incident transpiring at a distance beyond the limits of human vision, although not at the time in a state of trance nor experiencing soul travel. Are trance and astral projection the same? To differentiate between these 3 phases of ESP, in OBE, he would have left his physical body in a state of trance or sleep, traveled in his astral body to the scene of the occurrence, and then returned to his physical form to report what he had witnessed. In extended clairvoyance, he projected only his inner vision through the faculties of the unfolded third eye. Trance and astral projection are not synonymous terms. There are several types of trance and several types of psychic phenomena which occur while one is in the trance state. Astral projection, or OBE, is one of them. It usually occurs only when one's normal consciousness is non-functional due either to the trance state or to normal sleep. Under certain circumstances, one may pass directly from normal consciousness to a soul travel experience, but it is not a frequent occurrence. Therefore, even though astral projection is trance, trance is not always astral projection. Soul travel may be used for a variety of purposes. One is to be of service to people both on the astral plane and on earth. Under the guidance of beings from the higher dimensions of life, an army of workers functions continuously on the astral plane. Many Astarians are part of that army, and perhaps you are among them. At night, when your physical body is asleep, you may be joining those on the astral who occupy their time performing services for others. Perhaps you remember occasional ventures of this type when you awaken, though it may appear as a vivid dream. One of the objects of our endeavors to develop your ability to perform OBE is to be able to travel in the astral, then remember your journeys when you rouse and return to waking consciousness. Another beneficent purpose of attaining OBE is in conjunction with the service of healing. Trained and developed healers frequently employ soul travel. Both Earlyne and I, Robert, use the art in our healing activities. We are aware many mornings when we waken that we have been with Astarians who are ill and in need of healing. We also receive reports from some who declare they have seen us standing by them during a siege of illness, although we seldom recall the astral visit. A description of astral flight. The person performing astral projection, whom we call an astralist, can travel to locations either on the astral or on the earth plane. To illustrate, let me refer to some experiences in the family of Reverend Nellie Curry, a famous clairvoyant for more than 50 years in Midwestern and Southern United States. I have served on numerous church rostrums with her and have marveled many times at her uncanny clairvoyance. At the time of this experience, Nellie's son, Frank, lived in Lomita, California, and a daughter, Dorothy, in Dallas, Texas. Frank was never particularly interested in ESP in general, but he possessed an insatiable desire to experience soul travel and spent considerable time and effort toward this attainment. It was his frequent habit for many years to seat himself in a comfortable chair and consciously attempt to will his escape from his physical body. What are some practical aids to soul flight? Having spent several years studying this phenomena, he was aware of the steps necessary to attainment. 1. Relax physically and mentally. 2. Select a specific location to which you wish to project yourself. 3. Build up an emotional and mental effort, literally willing yourself to leave the physical body and be present at the selected location. 4. Observe what is occurring at that distant location at the moment you are there. On this particular occasion, Frank selected his sister's home in Dallas, Texas. He had never visited Dorothy's home, but during his concentration one night, he held a mental picture of her in his mind and, with every ounce of energy at his command, willed his astral body to consciously leave his physical body and travel to her address in Texas. The hour was late when he began his meditations. These are his words as he described his experience to me later. Quote, I was leaning back in my chair, completely relaxed physically, but mentally straining to project myself. Suddenly, I felt a wrench or jerk inside myself, and in a split second of time, I found myself in what was evidently Dorothy's bedroom at her home in Dallas. I stood at the foot of her bed. She was asleep. I looked around, trying to impress on my mind a description of the room so that I could write about it to her later. I made a mental note of the surroundings, including the time indicated on the clock by her bed. I wanted to do something to let her know I was there, if it were at all possible. I reached out and caught her bed and shook it. She started up almost immediately and sat there staring at me. Then, just as suddenly as I had found myself there, I found myself back in my own body in California. I entered it with the same wrench as I left it. Next day, I wrote Dorothy a letter telling of my visit, describing her room and the hour I had been there. Here is Dorothy's side of the story as she told it to me. She said, quote, I was sleeping soundly when, For some unaccountable reason, I woke up as if someone had called me or was shaking me. I sat up. There stood Frank at the foot of my bed. I saw him just as plainly as if he stood there in the flesh. I know I did not see him clairvoyantly. His form seemed partially materialized, just enough for me to be able to see him standing there. I was too startled to speak to him. He vanished before I could gather my wits together. I was frightened at first, for Frank had been ill. My first thought was that he had gone over and had contacted me to let me know of his death. I looked at my clock to note the time. I started to get up and call long distance to California to inquire about him. Then I received a strong impression that he was all right. I made a note of the time and went back to sleep. The following morning, I wrote Frank a letter telling him about it and the hour I had seen him. Our two letters crossed in the mail. When I received his, he had very accurately described my bedroom, which he had never seen in the physical, and he correctly stated the hour of his experience. He had even described the color of the blanket on my bed and the drapes at the window. Frank had another similar experience. After his success with his sister in Dallas, he decided to attempt to reach his mother, Rev Curry, who was spending the winter in Florida. Florida is considerably farther away from California than Dallas, and Frank was not as successful in this attempt as in the first. He was able to project himself to her room in Florida, but was able to observe only one thing, that she was sleeping in an old rusty iron bed. This surprised Frank very much, for even though he had never seen the room in which his mother slept, he was acquainted enough with her habits to feel she would not be sleeping in such a bed. However, he wrote about it, stating what he believed he had seen. Imagine his surprise to have his mother write back that on that particular date, guests had dropped in to spend the night, which caused his mother to give up her own beautiful bedroom and sleep for this one night on an iron bed in a small extra room. This explanation established beyond a shadow of a doubt that Frank actually was there in Florida in his astral form. It was always Frank's opinion that he was not as successful in his attempt with his mother in Florida because Florida is so much further away than Texas. I do not share this opinion with Frank. I know distance is no obstacle to the astral body. I believe it is an obstacle only when we allow it to be so in our mind. How is distance a physical barrier only? I think distance is an obstacle only as we, following our normal thinking, limit ourselves mentally. That is, the greater the distance, the more we are apt to think it more difficult, thereby creating our own limitation. How to project yourself. If Frank Curry, with perseverance and practice, could experience these soul projections, so can you. You may not have the slightest interest in ESP in general or of unfolding innate psychic faculties, but you would enjoy being able to soar consciously into higher realms. If so, you can make soul travel a goal toward which to strive. If you wish to develop ESP, you will also benefit by efforts toward astral projection. After even one conscious experience on the astral, one is never the same again. In your experiments with soul travel, you should strive to lift yourself into a higher vibratory dimension. For instance, instead of attempting to contact someone personally through a clairvoyant experience, attempt to go to, say, William Smith's home in the higher realms. Concentrate not only upon William, but also upon his home and attempt to project yourself to the place on the astral where he lives. And if you are successful, you will be sufficiently rewarded by that one experience to satisfy yourself if you should have another psychic or spiritual manifestation the rest of your earth life. That one visit will be ample reward for all the time spent thus far investigating matters of this nature. Furthermore, such an experience will help you acquire further knowledge of that plane of life to which you will one day journey. Can I see what it's like over there prior to my death? You think of the next life and say to yourself, it is wonderful to know my loved ones still live in a beautiful world over there. However, even this comforting faith, no matter how strong, cannot take the place of one's own visit to this other country or your firsthand knowledge of this incomparable land. Actually, every night of your life you experience soul flights, even though you may not remember these journeys in your conscious mind. There is separation of the soul from the physical body during sleep. For some, it may be slight, perhaps a distance of only a few feet, and the consciousness may remain in a state of semi-awareness. Depending on the degree of evolution of the particular soul, the astral self may leave the physical far behind and travel extensively on the higher planes. All Astarians who have made progress in studying degree lessons are able to take far journeys into higher planes during sleep. For you all are advanced considerably in ESP. Even the average person is evolved to the degree of complete consciousness on the astral. What you wish to bring about is a remembrance of these journeys, lessons you learn over there in temples of learning and scenes you witness. What comprises the soul body? There are two ways to achieve this goal. One is to strive to develop the causal body, the permanent vehicle of the soul, the body into which only the good you do is deposited. Centered in that body is the seat of higher memory, the superconsciousness. And as you do good, it develops, thereby causing a remembrance of higher experiences to penetrate your normal conscious mind. The second way is to concentrate intensely upon the astral plane just before drifting to sleep. Many whose causal bodies are well developed, but who do not deliberately center intense concentration on remembering astral flights, do not bring the remembrance of such experiences into their conscious minds. To illustrate how the intensity of desire impresses an incident on one's memory, I recall an experience of my early childhood. A Major League Baseball team was to play an exhibition in the town where we lived, and it became just about the most important issue of my young life that I see the game. On arriving at the ticket window, I discovered the admission to be more than I expected, and I hadn't nearly enough money. I returned home broken-hearted. My world had crumbled. My father was sympathetic to my plight, gave me the needed money, and took me back to the ballpark. What causes deep-etched memories? The point is that the intensity of my desire was so strong, I can still remember details of that game from nearly half a century ago. In comparison, there have been many other, much more important events which I have long since forgotten. Any experience becomes etched in the memory according to one's emotional intensity about it before it happens. So before you drift to sleep at night, 1, attempt to erase current problems and frustrations from your thoughts. 2, focus your thoughts upon friends or family in the astral world and generate an intense desire to visit them in their home over there. 3, finally, command your subconscious to bring a remembrance of your visit to that home into your conscious mind upon waking. To assist in the process, you might pose questions to your higher self before falling asleep. For example, let us assume you have selected your father as the person you wish to contact in the higher spheres. You might ponder such questions and thoughts as, I wonder what Dad's home is like. He always liked knotty pine paneling, and I wonder if he has as many books as he did when here. Try to keep your mind centered on Dad as you drift to sleep. Never seek an astral journey in a haphazard way. Always select the person you wish to visit or the particular location. Better still, both. We refer to this method as selective tuning. Does denial of communication nullify its possibilities? A question sometimes asked is it easier in an astral projection to contact someone who was a mystic or a psychic who understood and believed in the law of communication? It is considerably easier to make contact with such a one. However, I have known many instances where someone remembered visiting a person on the astral who had been bitterly opposed to communication while living on Earth. A great deal depends upon how much the one on the astral has learned since their transition. If some of your loved ones were non-believers while living, you need not fear they could ever be reached. For even if they did not understand the laws, there are teachers always ready to help them to communicate if they desire it. The purple egg of light. You may be interested in an exercise practiced by both Earlyne and myself to attain the ability to project ourselves into astral realms. I have mentioned already the curtain parting exercise in connection with clairvoyance, clairaudience, trance, and other phases of ESP. See the fifth degree, lesson 8. But in the case of OBE, we found it more satisfactory to use the following. Begin with breathing step of Lama Yoga. In any development of ESP you wish to attain, we suggest that you always begin your practice with Lama Yoga and then proceed to whatever mental exercise you desire. After the breaths have been completed, first select the one in higher realms whom you wish to meet when you step through that doorway into the astral world. Then, instead of visualizing the purple curtain hanging before you, as you did for clairvoyance, visualize an egg-shaped purple light. Mentally hold that purple egg before you and strive with all your mental might to walk through it. Some may prefer to visualize a golden egg. The color gold may be more easily held in the mind than purple. Earlyne and I both visualize the purple color because during our meditations we always seem to be already surrounded by clouds of purple. But it may not be so in your individual case. Choose the color which seems to be prominent in your own aura, or simply the color which appeals most to you, and make that the color of the mentally visualized auric egg through which you wish to ascend. There is an esoteric reason for different colors being prominent in our lives. It is because mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, we are vibrationally attuned to different cosmic and solar rays. You may wish to cut an egg from colored paper as an aid to visualization. Paste it on a white cardboard and place it on a wall or table as near to eye level as possible. Concentrate your entire mental power upon projecting your consciousness through the egg light. Soul travel in the Bible. There are biblical references to soul travel. For example, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul said, I knew a man in Christ more than 14 years ago, but whether I knew him in the body or without the body, I do not know. God knows. This very one was caught up to the third heaven. And I still know this man, but whether in the body or whether without the body, I cannot tell. God knows how that he was caught up to paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Ramsa translation. The meaning of this scripture is quite clear. Paul, an initiate, was obviously well acquainted with being out of the body in soul flights. He speaks casually in this case as though the people whom he addressed were accustomed to astral projection and took it for granted that a person's soul could depart the body, travel into higher realms, and bring back a remembrance of it. Your astral experiences during sleep. Everyone is active in an astral sense during sleep. However, not everyone is active to the same degree or even in the same way. To understand this, let's first divide humanity into three general classifications. 1, the spiritually undeveloped person. 2, the average person. 3, the spiritually developed person. First, remember you have many more bodies than just the physical. You possess a physical body, an astral body, a mental body, and a causal body. There are others, but they are not pertinent to this particular teaching. During our life on earth, higher bodies are developed through all our acts, experiences, studies, and thoughts. So the classification of the spiritually undeveloped person does not refer to the physical body only, but to astral and higher bodies as well, and particularly in this lesson to the astral body. The astral body of the spiritually undeveloped individual can be compared to the undeveloped physical body of a young child who has not yet learned to walk too well alone. This soul is only vaguely conscious in the astral vibration. It is projected there each night while the physical body sleeps, but is only dimly aware of events occurring about it, or perhaps not at all. If any awareness permeates its consciousness, it is as a dream pervades your own, a vague, disconnected dream. This undeveloped astral body does not wander far from its sleeping physical counterpart, but hovers near it in a more or less dormant mental state. Why should I purify my mind with holy thoughts before I go to sleep? The astral body of the average person emerges at night from the physical body, sometimes in a wakeful state, sometimes not, depending upon the mental state of one's conscious mind before sleep. This astral body is considerably better formed than that of the spiritually undeveloped individual. In fact, in most cases, it leaves its sleeping physical counterpart far behind and wanders into the high astral planes, gaining experiences. True, its wanderings are not always too well directed. It might occasionally be better described as drifting, but the consciousness is completely aware, and often the colors of the astral aura are beautiful to behold. If the problems of the physical world are not too deeply embedded in the astral consciousness, the average person will gain considerable knowledge during his or her astral plane driftings. If problems are too much a part of this soul's consciousness, it will be unable to journey far from the physical and will in fact be held close to it, too steeped in pending decisions on the physical plane to be aware of astral surroundings. The spiritually developed person is keenly awake on the astral plane. Not only awake, but usually will be among the army of helpers mentioned earlier. This soul travels extensively, learning, helping others. You are such a soul. The wonder why I already know you. Though you may not always consciously remember your adventures or learning experiences, a great many of your encounters are retained in your outer consciousness, so that people with whom you work on the astral who are still living on earth will be immediately recognized should you happen to meet on the physical plane. The same is true of places and scenes. This is one of the causes of the phenomenon known as déjà vu, a sudden recognition of a locale without ever having physically been at that place before. Answers to your problems become more readily available, having been worked out on the astral with the help of teachers and advisors there. Degrees of soul travel. Perfecting the art of soul travel is the most rewarding achievement. There are degrees of astral projection just as there are degrees of trance. There is soul travel when the self leaves the body and travels to a location on earth, visiting a person still in the flesh. There is a type when the self travels to a realm of astral life to visit a home of a loved one, a university of learning, or a spiritual temple. Then there is the projection of the self travels far beyond the astral into higher planes, gaining illuminating spiritual experiences, gazing upon Akashic records, beholding the past, present, and future, witnessing the entire record of one's own past lives. It is to this exalted out-of-body experience that we turn now. The three approaches to soul travel. There are three approaches to attaining soul travel or any type of soul projection. 1. The mesmeric or hypnotic approach. 2. The magical approach. 3. The yogic, which, among others, includes such disciplines as A. Concentrating on a crystal ball. B. Concentrating on a black or colored spot centered in a white surface. C. concentrating on a lit candle. Some simply refer to turn to the inner self for contemplation. An extremely difficult but excellent discipline is that of concentrating upon the end of the nose, mentioned in Lesson 8 of the 5th degree. It is very effective if you can master it as a way to turn your mind rapidly inward. Another technique leading to soul flight is to focus your attention upon a chakra. Many select the center of the head area. Holding the mind there causes tremendous activity in the third eye and in the crown chakra. Success in this practice leads to entering a state of superconsciousness. Let us assume for a moment that you have followed faithfully the 4 yogic steps of the Penetralia: non-destruction, austerity of habits, breathing and meditation, and are beginning to experience consciousness on the astral. There is much that you should know, not only for your own protection, but for your edification. Why should I be discreetly silent about my experiences? The first thing to remember is never to boast of your OBE experiences as if you have learned all there is to know about the astral plane. Remember that your astral vision may be out of focus until you have enjoyed considerable experience there. If someone requests a description of your journey, instead of adopting a definite positive attitude about what life there is like, be flexible in your opinions and suggest that further experience may prove your first impressions wrong. You may recall the experiments in soul travel as practiced many years ago by Stuart Edward White and his wife Betty. As a consequence of their psychic investigations, he wrote volume after volume describing their experiences. Some titles are The Betty Book, Across the Unknown, The Unobstructed Universe, The Road I Know, The Stars Are Still There, Anchors to Windward, The Joy of Living, With Folded Wings. Actually, Betty and Stuart Edward White began by experimenting with a Ouija board. Their first experience was as a parlor game, but they were immediately sobered when entities communicating purported to be deceased loved ones and friends. This began a long and serious series of investigations. Following instructions received through the Ouija board, they employed more serious methods. These were begun by having Betty recline upon a couch and cover her eyes with a blindfold. Stuart took his place in a chair beside her and held her hand or wrist. By this means, Betty was able to escape her body and see astral scenes. To their amazement, they discovered that while traveling on the astral, her physical body could speak to him and describe all she was seeing and doing. She used such terms as high frequency, low frequency, magnetic fields, transmissions, correspondence, trance, astral light, and others which were unknown to her normal conscious mind. Let me explain with an analogy. Years ago, in radio, a newscaster is seated in a broadcasting booth, yet the newscaster's voice emerges from your receiving set many miles away. In the same way, Betty's physical body was simply the radio while she broadcasted from many miles away on the astral plane. The connecting link was the etheric cord which joins all astral bodies to their physical counterparts. Her physical body was lying in trance, yet it would give voice to the sights she was witnessing far away on the astral. You can readily understand that even though you hear a person's voice on your radio, the radio is not the person. In the same way, Betty's body was not Betty. Betty's body was only the radio. Betty herself was operating on the frequency of the astral, broadcasting back through the connecting cable or etheric cord, and her voice was projected through the physical body lying in trance. Frequently, Betty could not consciously recall her journeys into the astral. After she passed into the trance state, Stuart often was able to release her hand and make notes of her transmittings as she spoke with those she was contacting. Perhaps I may be able to give you a clue to follow in your own practice along the road Betty and Stuart Edward White traveled. What does the radio in my head resemble? I have compared Betty's entranced body to a radio through which the voice spoke. The pineal gland, in chemical composition and mineral makeup, bears a remarkable resemblance to the crystal sets of radio's early days. Even the physical appearance of the gland, though named after the pine cone, corresponds somewhat to the metallic post of the crystal set upon which a thin wire was adjusted to capture the primitive broadcasts of that time. Concentration upon the area of the head in which the pineal gland resides serves to vibrate a hair-like projection on the gland which corresponds to the thin wire of the crystal radio set. Under such stimulation, it curves around to touch the gland itself in almost precisely the same manner as did the radio wire. Infinite intelligence, it appears, constructed a human radio and antenna inside the head of humans ages before humankind could even create a mechanical imitation. What links my brain to my superconscious mind? The astral body is a complete counterpart of the physical body, including psychic centers comparable to the pituitary and pineal glands. There is also an astral brain. This is a link between the superconscious mind and the physical brain. It is this astral brain which blocks remembrance of astral experiences because of the web of etheric substance which separates it from the physical brain. This etheric substance is as delicate as a cobweb, yet sturdy as a rock. The web it forms is the veil between the two worlds, which, when drawn aside, reveals other worlds to the consciousness. The achievement we wish to attain is to tune the physical brain to such high frequency that the impacts of the astral brain are transmitted directly to the glandular receiving set of the pituitary and pineal glands. One excellent method of accomplishing this is through the use of prana, that spiritual ether which permeates the universe. To utilize prana, one must practice a breathing exercise such as Lama Yoga, which will direct this spiritual ether not only to the physical brain and glands, but also will activate the astral brain and glands. It is not our premise that the etheric web should be drawn aside permanently, for one would not wish to go about one's daily life unable to shut out the astral world. We want only to draw it aside from time to time when attempting to bring back from the astral an important remembrance of journeys there. Let us say two people plan to practice soul travel as did Betty and Stuart Edward White. To strengthen the assurance that the traveler will remember the journey, it is important for him or her to practice a mental exercise before beginning the experiment. The Betty must inwardly repeat over and over, "I will remember." Then, after taking her position for the experiment, she must continue willing herself to remember Stuart. Instead of simply holding her hand, should be sending toward her brain great charges of magnetism by the power of his mind, also willing her to remember. Let me caution you, Stuarts, that it may be essential for both of you to first block out Betty's awareness of her physical self and your awareness of her physical self in order for the astral projection to occur at all. Then begin the practice of willing the remembrance after Betty has obviously passed into the trance state. In other words, avoid talking to her, avoid shifting in your seat, simply hold her hand gently. Do not stroke it or do anything which will create in either of you an unnecessary awareness of her physical self just before or during this trance state. Why is it important to know how to concentrate? This explanation may seem vague, speaking first of the astral brain, then the etheric web, then skipping to the practice of willpower, but there is a definite connection. When Betty, having passed into a trance or even semi-trance state, finds herself on the astral, if she has concentrated upon remembering, she will recall this fact, and everything she does, everything she sees and does, will project itself with considerable impact upon the etheric web. You will recall from our earlier studies that the etheric web is composed of subtle physical atoms permeated by a vital fluid which is subject to influence both from the astral and physical worlds. When impacts from both the subject and the operator react upon the etheric web, these refined atoms become so highly magnetized they dissolve temporarily into the astral brain, and memory pours from the superconscious down through the astral brain into the physical brain, thereby reaching the conscious mind. When the experiment ends and Betty returns to her physical body, the atoms in the etheric web assume their normal frequency, and the astral world is again closed away, so that she might go on about her daily normal life. There may be times when the two experimenters may wish to switch polarities of being subject and operator. Some of you may not wish a conscious astral experience for fear you may be unable to re-enter your physical body. This should never be a matter of concern, for as long as the etheric, sutratmic cord connecting the astral to the physical remains intact, nothing can prevent your re-entry. However, should you experience fright or discomfort in any of your journeys, you have only to turn your attention to your physical body and you will be automatically drawn back toward it immediately, no matter how far away you might have been. The etheric or silver cord breaks only at the moment of death, and only the process of death can sever it. Therefore, set your fears at rest. Your main consideration is to bring a sharper remembrance of the experience into the conscious mind. Try to re-enter the physical body easily and gently. Sudden, rapid motion often causes a break in remembering. Try to glide easily back into the entranced or sleeping physical body, holding firmly to the experiences you wish to remember. You must always, and this is important, you must always immediately write down all that you remember. If you do not, no matter how vivid it may seem at the moment, it will rapidly slip away, and at some time later you will be unable to recall much that might prove extremely important. Are my acts recorded in a book of judgment? A complete record of time, which you know as the Akashic records, is kept on the causal plane. Let us say that you have an intense desire while on the astral to read these records. The materialist will argue interminably against their existence. But what is the use of arguing? Every thought, word, and deed of ours is recorded in the ethers, the record of which is sometimes called Book of Judgment. A sage once wrote, "I hear a voice that cries, Alas, alas! Whatever hath been written shall remain, nor be erased nor written over again. The unwritten only still belongs to thee. Take heed and ponder well what that shall be." This explains the truth of the records far better than any long dissertation I could offer. Now, how do we go about reading these records? First, let me refresh your memory. There are 7 planes of life. 1, physical. 2, astral, also known as etheric. 3, mental, divided into 2 subplanes, lower mental and causal or higher mental. 4, intuitional, Buddhic. 5, nirvanic. 6, modadic. 7, divine Godhead. Actually, there are 13 planes in all, but we group the higher planes of divinity under one classification as the divine Godhead because the human mind cannot grasp their infinite magnitude. All these planes interpenetrate each other. Therefore, someone upon the physical plane could come en rapport with the other higher planes, for they lie all about us, awaiting our sensitivity to them. A complete record is found on the causal plane. A reflection of those records may be found on the astral. It should always be remembered that a reflection of anything does not always provide a perfect resemblance of any given thing. This fact also applies to the mystic realms. No matter how you attain your view of the records, whether during soul flight from the physical body, or while you sit in concentration in the physical body, or during sleep, you must remember that you will be viewing only the astral reflection of the actual records. And on page 19, there is a great image of also the planets that are associated with the different planes. The physical etheric is the Earth, Moon, Mars, the lower astral, Venus, the upper astral, Saturn, the concrete lower mind, Mercury, the higher abstract mind, Jupiter is intuitional, Buddhic, and nirvanic, and the Sun is monadic, the plane of Christ, substance, and divine Godhead. Again, that's on page 19. In lesson 11, part 2 of Dr. Roberts' teachings concerning soul travel, you will receive further instruction concerning the Akashic records and how to read them. So that concludes. If you remember, when Earlyne is talking about the mental permanent seed, she gives it's basically a humming that you can do. I mean, we know where the mental permanent seed is. It's inside the pineal gland, and you can just imagine two popsicle sticks, one going from the upper tip of your left ear through your head to the upper tip of your right ear, and then from the center or just above the nose at the ajna to the back of the head. And where those two intersecting planes are is where the pineal gland is. And what Earlyne suggests, and it's a great option, and you can actually try this, is you hum Huang, Huang, and then you go yang, yang, yang. So you hum yang with a breath, yang, yang, Huang, yang, yang, yang. So you hum that. So we'll do something like that right now, just so you have the experience of it. I experimented with also Huang Yin 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 for the pituitary gland. So experiment with that and let me know what you think or what you experience. I think it's interesting because obviously we have a masculine and a feminine side or a magnetic and a electronic side. So let's try the pineal gland. Go ahead and just close your eyes. Gently bring your awareness. If you want, you can just say the word pineal gland, pineal, pineal, or mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed. Just go nice and gently, just move the awareness to where those two intersecting lines meet. And you'll feel almost an instant peace. And what you can do is slightly move away from that, just to affirm that's it. Now gently move the awareness back. Mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed. And now we will hum Huang. You hum while maintaining the awareness on the mental permanent seed or the pineal gland. Now we will do Yang 3 times, so 3 breaths. Maintain the awareness, gentle inhalation, mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed, mental permanent seed, and hum. Gently inhale. One more time. And as you exhale, hum Yang. Maintain the awareness on the mental permanent seed. Nice, slow inhalations, exhalations. I'm not sure if I can feel almost like it's almost like a tube coming down into the mental permanent seed in through the Sushumna Nadi and through the crown, from below the crown into the mental permanent seed. It's pretty powerful. So experiment with that and do that a few times before. This may be a little too energizing before you go to bed, but you can experiment with that or do one of the Astarian meditations in order to release any of the energies, the lower energies of the astral body that are in the aura before you go to sleep. So just make sure you say, I release all unauthorized connections and release those from the front and from the back. And then do an Astara affirmation. The love of my heart pervades the world. Bless the earth, or do the Lord's Prayer. Do whatever you'd like, or try this and see how that works. One thing that I like to do also is before I go to bed, I always invoke and then I ask to where I want my astral body or my mental body to go. Usually I say I would like to go into the inner ashram of Astara for service and for healings. So we can do service there, and if our body needs it, we can receive healing from those that are there as well, that are there obviously for as part of the Astarian hierarchy. So experiment and let me know what you discover, what you experience, what you find, what you see. And we'll see you tomorrow for the blessing of the prayer petitions, Wednesday for the mystic vibrations. And then next week we will do the meditation and we will do continue on the spinal causeway and use one of the angels. So have a beautiful rest of your day, morning, night, whatever it is for you. Thank you so much. Namaste, namaste, precious, precious souls. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And if you have any questions or anything, you can always reach out, Anthony@astara.org. And we'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye. Take care.